My name is Martin Isenburg. I'm the CEO of rapidlasso GmbH and I'm coming to you here from beautiful Costa Rica. Also known as the LAStools Guy, I got stranded here when the pandemic broke out in March 2020 and I've been here ever since, turning this formerly empty lot into a small urban farm. With chickens, with vegetable beds, laser chickens, and furthermore, this little house behind me I've turned into somewhat of a tropical research center. Very humble. I've been collecting data by helicopter and by drone and by looking into national archives to know about the environmental laws and where the local authorities are not enforcing them to the detriment of the community and of future generations. And one idea is to document this so others may copy me and do the same thing in order to make a difference. So let's go inside and I start the talk. So let's go inside. Welcome to my humble research office. This wood was felled just across the street and these chairs are made from driftwood by hand. And here is my workspace. My talk is titled Scanning Samara, Geospatial Data for Environmental Citizen Science. My reputation for being a bit of a rogue, vagabond element comes from my previous employment at Lawrence Livermore National Labs, a nuclear weapons lab, where I worked on drone and landmine projects. And at the same time, I was an urban farmer already. And then one day I had the idea to turn this beautiful Queen Anne Victorian into the hippest urban farm ever, like in this backyard, by bringing in lasers and combining them with chickens. And I thought it was a great idea, but unfortunately, my bosses didn't at all think so that was a good idea, and we had a big fallout. And what happens when you have a fallout with a big lab known for fusion lasers, you find yourself inconvenienced on the way back to your home country, where you have to turn things completely around and start new. So I started rapidlasso based on all the science I had done so far, and thanks to the compressor I did have a running start, and then hit the usual conferences, had some nice booze, and eventually got interviewed. And at that point, it looked like I would become a CEO of, like any other geospatial company. But, whom was I kidding? This was more the life I had in mind. So I became a bit of an independent vagabond scientist, mostly doing my coding on location in remote places around the Earth. Eventually I landed here. This is Samara in Costa Rica. And I bought a little place and went surfing a lot. And then I started my first environmental project. Very simple. Replace plastic straws with paper straws. That was a huge success because that's kind of cute, and why not? The turtle with a straw up the nose. People have seen that, so I got straws and I got more straws, and eventually I convinced all the vendors to switch to paper straws. And I'm a scientist, so I added the science for everybody's easy understanding why this makes a difference. So there's this box in my garden for several years now, and after a few weeks the paper straws in the middle are gone, and the eco-plastic straws and the regular plastic straws don't behave too much different after, I think that was after 9 or 12 months. So the turtle nose will be punched by either one. And then people often complain, oh my god, somebody's cutting a big tree here. And then you go there and you try to figure out where it is, but you don't know how big it was anymore because, it's already in pieces on the floor. And then I was thinking, but that's exactly what we do with lasers. We measure and then we can do the math. So I fortunately got in touch with Nelson from LiDAR Latin America, and he came with one of his drones and we flew it, Samara. And at that point I thought, first LiDAR scan of Samara. So here you see downtown Samara, and that's our first scan, 4 flight lines. And suddenly I could measure in the point cloud. This is a PO3 portal, and here you see the center of town, the central plaza, and I could do measurements for activism. One of the first examples was restaurants occupying the public beach, the bien commun, which is illegal based on the maritime laws, but it's commonly done. And if nobody complains, it's widening, and more our public beaches are becoming commercial properties that are not anybody is paying for them. So with various illustration, here we see a classification coloring, I could make this really visual. Here you see the size of these various structures, ranchos, umbrellas on the beach. And you can actually quantify the occupied area. Here I figured out it was 150 square meters using the mojones. The mojones define the line where the public beach starts. And from the mojones I can also measure that it's over 30 meters is how far the restaurant is building out on the public beach. What are the mojones? Well, I can find them on the map from the municipality, and if I render that on top of a DTM, I can create a point cloud that I integrate into my portal, and voila, I have an interactive portal where I can do simple measurements that are very intuitive to look at for environmental activism. Another thing on the street, driving by, we captured these trees, these almendros trees here, and you will see in the next slide that they've been cut and replaced with a wall. It was a beautiful green fence that I was always happy about, and suddenly it's a concrete wall. These almendros trees that used to be here are only collected in my LiDAR. They still exist there today, and I can go back and see on that day how tall they were. We did also another scan. This is a little property in downtown that is still undeveloped and green, and here we did a pedestrian scan. So all these scans are very local in nature, so the information you have is only useful for if something happens there. Here's some nice images. You also see here this mural here of the monkey. That monkey actually has been painted over, so it's captured in the intensity of the LiDAR. Here's another mural face on the wall. So where am I? I'm here in Samara on the Pacific coast in Guanacaste. And what we scanned, we only scanned really the core downtown, this part here. And recently I've been looking more at this part here. There's a big empty field that always looked a bit unnatural. There's horses grazing there. And one day I saw a guy spraying herbicides. Here you see the destruction of paradise. I'm walking right into the fumes. The destruction of paradise by this man. He wants to poison the entire lot. Why does he want to do this? He wants to raise cattle in the agrochemical way. And for this he's destroying whatever is growing there already. Never mind that this has become a habitat for thousands of different species since it was destroyed 30 years ago. It used to be a mangrove area, but nature has come back, made it something else, made it a meadow full of insects, birds, lizards, snakes, frogs. I mean, you name it. I've walked this field numerous times. I know that the biodiversity of this field is quite big. Again, Nelson came, this time with a slightly better drone, and we made a flight plan for this area where all the herbicides were sprayed, and took off from a nearby lot with this really latest and statest of the art drone. It was quite a monster that flew there. And here's the result. I colored it using satellite imagery, but the geometry was captured by that drone. This is exactly that lot, and I got it as far as having one nice consistent point cloud in which I can now make the same kind of measurements as before. Here are just some example measurements. Since I found out about the laws at the same time, and I obtained then historical images of this lot that I got interested in only because of the spraying, but eventually I thought, oh, there's an interesting history. A German man destroyed 13 hectares of mangla, or maybe 10 hectares of mangla. Mangla means mangroves. And there is an old law that says a mangrove will always be part of the patrimony of the state. If anybody can prove mangroves or wetlands have been destroyed, it is the obligation of the state to return it to the patrimony. That just means it should never be building land. And right now, the person owning this lot, is trying to sell it for $8 million. And what I would like to do now, using mostly aerial images, because I obtained images all the way up to 1945, not too many LiDARs were flying around. I wish I had a LiDAR so I could quantify the height of the manglar more exactly. The mangrove, the height of the trees. But I would like to basically delineate this area again so nobody can build there, and all the building has to be outside or 15 meters outside this wetland area. That's the idea. You can see the ocean wants its mangrove back. With every high tide, with every large wave, a little bit of this artificial man-made structure is disappearing. That it's artificial and man-made you can also see in the root structures, which is all very shallow and horizontal, because this soil shouldn't be there. It was brought there with 15,000 or 14,000 truckloads of dirt from mountains. And one by one we are losing our beautiful front line of palm trees that fall into the estuary. The mangroves are not the only wetland under threat. Also the wetlands that feed into the mangroves are being in danger of destroyed. I observed one such destruction myself and filmed it. This is outside the area that I had flown by drone. It is up here. So the idea came to mind to fly a larger area, but not with the drone. Fortunately, I met the folks from Stereo Cato that have an office in San Jose of Costa Rica. They are originally from Spain. And we decided to make a flight and also some training in my little tropical research office. Here was the first big meeting of processing LiDAR data. And here comes the helicopter. In the background you see Samara Bay. Shortly before the helicopter arrived, I raked the name of my software into the beach so I could later on see it in the autophotos. This was the actual flight that took place. As soon as I got the first autophotos, I started making up-to-date maps of the current situation of infraction of the public beach. The public beach starts where this line of mojones is, and everything on the other side is supposed to be common good, the commons, and shouldn't be used by commercial interests. But as you can see in orange and in red, all these structures are violating this fundamental law. Especially bad, it's right next to the estuary where ranchos and cabinas and restrooms are built pretty much all the way to the edge of the river. I compiled all this data into an 8-page report and submitted it to the municipality for their consideration and their fixing of the broken situation. We will see what happens. Another thing was that a neighbor accused me to flood her house with my gardening activities. I hadn't done much more than build a few permaculture garden beds, so that seemed kind of fishy. And just a simple look shows you that, this is the wrong water flow direction for me to having an effect in the first place. And then having access to older images from the past, I knew that, it was flooding long before I even bought this garden property. So maybe this guy is the reason. That's why the drone was flown, because there was an infill happening and dredging was happening in an area which is very much affected by, in the rainy season, by stormwaters draining out of a wetland. And then, very fortunate, I was able to get my hands on historic LiDAR data. Because having access to data from the past, that really is a game changer when having new data from the present. Now I will be able to compare the situation from 2012, when this data was flown for the purpose of assessing earthquake damage, to the new data that we just flew this February. And I will be able to find all the large infill and modification of terrain differences that could potentially contribute to the more severe flooding we have seen in recent days. Thank you.
So Martin, I know you have an update you'd like to give.
Not so much of an update. Hello. I kind of realized there's sort of a cliffhanger here that I should have been part of the video. I talked about this. I got my hands on old data. Coincidentally, why? I gave a workshop at the university and they said, oh yeah, we have some data. No, I mean, I've been here for 5 years. I had no clue there was data from 2012. And I don't think, actually, and I know, this is not an unusual situation. So when you want to build up an Earth archive, one of the fundamental things would be to go after the data silos that already exist. And I'm sure somebody's mentioned that before, but I didn't follow every talk in the last 2 days. These exist. For example, the Royal Irrigation Department in Thailand has data that was donated after the big flooding in Bangkok. So has the Thai Space Agency. So does the WWF flew in Congo for a biomass project. So are a lot of the big biomass projects by some other scientists that refuse to share their data with the public. Now, these are historic data sets that make a big difference, because just the new flight is really not so useful by itself unless you wait 5 years and then you can look sort of back what are the changes. But if we are able to gather from all possible sources and convince people how useful it is to surrender that data, that I think is a very crucial component that should be part of the effort. All right.
Yeah, so I can just address that really quickly. We, one issue, of course, is data fusion and the fact that a lot of those data are at super different resolutions, and the way that and some of those data exist as point cloud data, some exists as, some of it's even like DEM of some manner or another, or and as you well know, there's many different ways to actually process the data for the actual point cloud, and we're constantly refining our ability to create better, more accurate, better point clouds, etc. All this stuff. So what we talked about doing with the Earth Archive is trying to curate, it's like we have a living database and a static database. I should have put my hands the other way. A static database and a living database. In the static database, we're going to try to get as much of the raw data as we can and store it. And 20 years from now, who knows what additional information people will be able to pull out of those data. And then we'll have our sort of dynamic database. And we'd like to create a system, although we're not there yet, and we're not going to be there for a while, where people could create products and manipulate the data and upload it back into some sort of system. I really like the old, when SketchUp was still owned by Google, they had the the library, and the library still exists, but a lot of stuff has been taken down from, which I don't understand why that is, but and there's a bunch of Trumbull people here, maybe they can explain it, but you know, you could go into that library and take like I don't know, if you're building a 3D model, you could take a wheel from something and a steering wheel from something else or whatever, and put it together and make whatever you wanted. And I really like that kind of system, as long as the attributions and stuff are done correctly. And I like to see us develop that. And I think that's one of our long-term goals. Our immediate goal is just to get as much data as we can. Long-term data, you know, long-term goals to do something like that, with both the raw data in its static form and then a more dynamic form of the data. And I don't know if you saw Peter Atala's talk yesterday from Voxel Maps, but that platform, our portion of that, the platform that they've kind of constructed for us, is ready to go. We're in the process of getting that uploaded now. And we can absorb, using that voxel-based platform, we have the ability to absorb all sorts of different kinds of data. It's ready-made for data fusion, and it's ready-made to absorb or ingest. I don't like that word ingest. I think it sounds kind of unpleasant, but we're able, that's sort of the basis. So we're able to ingest those data from different resolutions and different scanning sources into what will become the Earth Archive. So we have a call up that says, give us your data. And if people know about data and they could let us know, we'll do our best with the resources we have to track that down. So that those data that you just showed from those, I guess that maybe the earthquake stuff that you showed, we'd love to get that put up. And I think, as you've demonstrated here, change detection is so valuable and is really the way to go for these kind of products. So that's I'm a professor, that's my long answer to your short question. And I don't know, do you have any other update? I have a question for you. I mean, what were people's reaction when you were like out there walking around with your video camera and the drones and stuff? Did they understand what you were up to, or was everybody just like?
Very few people. It was mostly those with prior exposure to technology or with prior exposure to the problems that either they would like work for the water management and they already knew similar technologies, or they would be aware of the problem and were interested in novel approaches. I mean, the 3D picture, the hologram, that always seems to kind of get the notion across what this technology can do.
Awesome. And what do you expect the municipality's reaction will be to your report?
Well, this is actually not a report. I'm following the guidelines of an environmental law professor that is kind of famous for taking on governments for their lack of enforcement of the very good laws of Costa Rica, often due to corruption. And he told me I have how to write it with the help of another environmental lawyer, such that it could be submitted to the Constitutional Court if they don't act, because it is their obligation to enforce the constitutional laws. And if they don't do that, and everybody here knows, everybody from there to there, everybody knows exactly why they're not enforcing it. That's not secret. They'll tell you the 4 names of the people why it's not being enforced, because they have a lot of friends over there. But once a directive comes from the capital, the municipality, in theory, has no more choice. I don't know. So I have to wait 2 months. I submitted it symbolically on Earth Day, so that was April 22nd. So this so-called recurso de amparo, this is basically, my local officials do not do the job I am hiring them to do, because this is a participatory democracy. We are the bosses. They are merely our servants, the municipality, that have to do the duties just like we have to do our daily duties. So that's the theory. The problem with it's a beautiful constitution in Costa Rica. The problem is implementation and corruption are not at the same level as the idea.
Right. Great. Well, I think I mean my last kind of question, I guess, would be, do you see more of this kind of? I mean, I would characterize this as kind of grassroots geospatial activism. And I've seen a couple of other examples of this happening before, mostly to do with archaeological sites, of course. But I'm wondering how if you see this becoming more common as we move forward.
It is. It's difficult because it's very labor intensive, and the people that have the abilities are often using these abilities to write tools to make a living. And the people that want to make a change often don't have the ability to make these kind of geospatial analysis. And to find both in the same person is rare.
Right.
And also, you are not necessarily the most popular person in town if you on both ends of the beach, you're going against the two most invested families that have basically founded this town. And they on that side say, yeah, you should go after them. And this side said, no, look what they are doing.
Right.
So local people that live here, they applaud me on one side, but they don't want to participate on the other side because they have bridges to burn. And
right.
As an outsider, I have fewer things that can be attacked. I don't have an actual business here.
Right, of course.
That's a lot of things that in practice produce hurdles. How from a distance it would be actually better. So once everything is scanned in 3D, like OpenStreetMap, especially the HOT the HOT initiative that can help from a distance. If you could do it this way, then there would not be local danger for people. All right.
Well, thank you so much for agreeing to participate, Martin, and thanks for your talk. And you'll have to keep us all updated on what the reaction.
Thank you for your amazing initiative and for putting up this interesting event. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, and thanks for participating. And you'll have to keep me informed. I want